Hello, I'm Cindy with Wisconsin Voices for Recovery, and this is Speak Out on Stigma. Today we'll be hearing from Patrick. Hey, Patrick, how are you today?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you.
Good. So tell me about some of the damaging physical impacts you've experienced as a result of stigma, such as relationships, finances, work, housing, medical care, and or health.
Uh, I think the biggest impact that has had, especially from that kind of list, has been, I think, in like healthcare and medical services. Uh, Having been labeled, um, a heroin addict, um, I it's like a huge red flag anytime that I've tried to seek any sort of medication. Like I'm automatically like viewed as like drug seeking, even if there is like a legitimate, purpose. Like I've suffered some pretty severe uh head trauma, and despite the constant migraines that I endure, I I cannot seem to get any medical professional to take that seriously. Same thing with my anxiety disorder. I have panic attacks pretty often, and like the best that they'll do me is like hydroxyzine, which does nothing, for that. Um, there's also been times where been, I've gone into like an emergency room after having been, you know, doing drugs and drinking every single day for, months or even years, and trying to seek some kind of help so that I could get myself into like a rehab program that I already had like set up. But I would need to physically detox before going in, and I was just thrown out on the street. I guess they just figured I was just some bum who was just trying to get out of the rain or something, and that is really really frustrating. I've been escorted out of emergency rooms a couple of times because I've gotten so upset, with the hypocrisy there, and it's really really frustrating, when you finally find yourself in front of that window of willingness to do something about your problem, and the people that have sworn to help won't. I just that's so disheartening. Like just it crushes my faith in humanity, for that time being anyway. So those are some of the biggest impacts. Like in fact, yeah, it came down to the fact that like I had to go to a different hospital, and I had to start. The first thing out of my mouth was like, they're like, "Oh, can I help you today?" I'm like, "Yeah, I hope so, because if you don't, I'm going to leave here and I'm going to kill myself." Like it has to come to that for them to take what I'm saying seriously. Otherwise, there'd be some sort of liability or something, and that's all they really seem to care about. And that really that really pisses me off. Because even if that's true, it shouldn't have to be. It shouldn't have to go to that extreme. A person simply just wanting to get help shouldn't necessitate a suicide threat. You know. So those are the biggest things that come to mind for that question. I mean, of course, I've had you know difficulties with relationships, friendships and romantic relationships over the past. But in large part, I accept responsibility for for that. I can't really blame that on stigma. Um, but yeah, so I guess that's how I answer that question.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. The word disheartening really, captures, the emotional toll that that takes where, you're reaching out for help to those that are supposed to be helping, and the stigma gets in the way and prevents that from happening. It causes barriers, it causes rejection, it causes, being denied care, both for substance use disorder and also general medical care for a condition or conditions. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. Um, what can communities do to reduce stigma and support people who are recovering from substance use?
Well, I think, the first thing really is just, a willingness to have a discussion, to talk about it, to have open discussion. Um, Obviously I'm aware of, how, uh, addiction, touches the lives of so many people, if not directly, like, through a loved one, or, someone that they have some sort of emotional attachment to. And that can be a difficult conversation when people's emotions get wrapped up in it. And I understand that. But I think a lot of it, a lot of the time, I think people just, they don't know what to say about it because they don't know how to talk about it because they don't, like, they're not educated enough, to really have like an informed, uh, you know, um, impression of what it is. Like, I remember when I was in college, and I was in my 30s, and I'm in class with a bunch of 18 and 20-year-olds, and if the instructor would pose some question, everybody's just sitting there like with this dumb look on their face, like people are so afraid to say something because God forbid they say something that is wrong, or they sound like an idiot or something like that. So like I think sometimes people, like, they have an unwillingness to speak about it because they don't know enough about it. So I really think there needs to be greater education on what substance use is, how it affects people, not just physically, but like emotionally, psychologically. Um, because I mean, it's not just like, I don't think I've a single heroin addict in my life that didn't at some point suffer some sort of physical abuse, whether it was, sexual in nature or just violent. Uh, so like that's a big component of that. When people say, "Oh, why would you do that to yourself?" It's like, well, if you lived my life, why wouldn't you? you know, like, with my addiction to alcohol, a lot of that is just due to, like, just insane depression, um, and anxiety, and it's like one of the only ways that I've been able to find to quiet all of that down. And I think that there is a greater empathy for why people use, they'd be more willing to talk about it with people. And then of course, there's people who, um they've just formed their own opinions based on misconception, and then when they start to talk, people will get immediately defensive because they'll feel like they're being attacked. So the person who suffers the problem, who wants so badly to be able to have this conversation, can't, because the person they're talking to is a moron. At least that's what it feels like. um so yeah, I really think that, greater education first and foremost would be really helpful. And then maybe, I'm not a big fan of the softening of language. um I don't know if you've ever seen the George Carlin bit where he talks about that, but it really makes a great point. Like how over time, we stop using certain words over other words and terminology because suddenly those terms and everything become too emotionally impacting for people to take. And like just for example, like substance use disorder, being used over just addiction. you know and substance use disorder used to be substance abuse disorder. Like why can't, it's like, no, I'm not abusing it. Like, I'm just using it. Like, what's the difference? I mean, I don't know. So things like that, and then even in the recovery community itself, um I've had, over time, I mean, I've been in recovery now, for like 15 years, for better or worse. And I'm really grateful to have that community, because in the times that, like, my life, and the tragedies that I've endured have, you know crushed me and put me on my knees, I still, there's like this lingering bit of hope that I know that there are some people somewhere that will understand. So, thankfully I've been able, with that understanding and the encouragement of others, been able to put another year, of continuous, sobriety together, which is amazing. Um, Oh, yeah. So yeah, even in that community though, when somebody calls themselves an addict, or an alcoholic, and identifies that way, um, I think kind of, even though I said the thing about softening language, I feel like there must be some sort of psychological backlash to constantly calling yourself an addict, or an alcoholic. Uh, it's like, I mean, if I were to like go somewhere every single day and say, hi, I'm depressed, like, or, I'm suicidal or something like that, or, or if I were to go out and say, yeah, like talk about, oh yeah, every day I go somewhere and talk, yeah, my dad died or my son died, like just bringing that kind of stuff up in that context, even if I'm trying to talk about something good, it has an emotional and psychological impact, so if maybe more people in recovery in the recovery community could maybe try to work together. Like I remember the first time I saw the Anonymous People, the documentary, and um they would refer to themselves as a person in long-term recovery, and it seems that, like, I remember the first time I said that, to a group of people, and some of the old timers scoffed and kind of laughed at me, because I was only 5 years clean at the time. Like, oh, you long term, right? Like, it's like, well, it's long term doesn't just necessarily mean like the time behind me. It's more like a commitment to the time in front of me too. Like I'm not just doing this just to satisfy somebody else's whims, or to get out of trouble or whatever. It's like I want to live a better life because I know that when I'm using, my life sucks. It's terrible. It's tragic and awful, and I can't deal with anything. And when I'm clean and sober, beautiful things happen in my life. Not just like miraculously, but I'm better able to appreciate all the little things that I normally would have, been more cynical about, in other circumstances. So I don't know. I might have gone a little off the range there, but yeah, I really think though that like the language we use has a big impact on it, and if we're going to try to communicate, um, what a person experiences, not just in the midst of using, but in the journey to try to find help and maintain consistency with that, because we do have to communicate with professionals. We do have to communicate with community partners and leaders, and if everybody isn't speaking the same kind of language, then you know how can we communicate?
Yeah, absolutely. Really speaking to the education piece, you'd mentioned community empathy, the power of language, all of these things are really important and they influence our realities and our feelings about ourselves as well as others, and how we interact on a day-to-day basis. So yeah, language is super important. Um, is there anything else you'd like to add?
When a person finds it in themselves for whatever reason to try to seek help in getting uh you know just in having just a better way to live, that's a very small window, and it's not something that, like, when somebody has that willingness, suddenly it's like you can't like take your time, following some map that was written by somebody else to try to, you know, coordinate your way like down some, all these halls and different corridors and all that stuff. It's like, no, you just got to jump out the window. You got, it's like active addiction is like being in like a burning building, like you can't wait for the elevator to come up or like find the stairs. You just got to jump out the damn window. And yeah, you might hurt yourself, but but it's really important that people can jump on that opportunity. Like when I was forced to leave and just walk out into the cold, just devastated. It's some kind of miracle that I was able to motivate myself to go to a different hospital like 2 days later. You know, because most people, a lot, well, I say most people, but a lot of people in that situation would have just been like, forget it. You know, I'll just keep doing what I'm doing until I'm lucky enough to die, and that sucks. That sucks. There should be, like you said, like more empathy and yeah, and I understand too, I guess, that, you know, we we our behavior as human beings, is, largely impacted by the experiences that we've had in the past. And, you know, I could see how, a medical professional or any kind of healthcare professional, um, their experiences impact how they'll behave with like the next face in front of them, you know, and how people can become really bitter and cynical about human behavior and their motives. But even if there's the possibility that a person is just trying to get out of the rain, or if there's a possibility that maybe I'm just doing it because I want to avoid jail time, or to satisfy my girlfriend or my mother or whatever. It comes down to the fact that like this is a life or death situation for many people. And I don't think there's a whole lot of room for preconceived judgment in those moments, because turning somebody away or giving them some kind of prejudicial attitude could very well shut them down to seeking that kind of help. And they may never have that chance again.
Thank you so much.
I feel really fortunate. Yeah, thank
Yeah.
you. I appreciate you doing this.
Yeah, thank you so much, Patrick, for sharing your views on stigma. And thank you to our viewers for watching. Speaking on Stigma is a forum to raise awareness about the harmful impact of stigma on those in and seeking recovery. Recovery is for everyone. Together, we can eliminate stigma. Don't forget to like, comment, and share this video. Thank you, and have a good day.